Hi, welcome back to Cat Reads. I'm Amber and today I'm going to be doing my weekly wrap-up for the first week of March. I was able to finish 2 books, and the first one was The Wine of Angels by Phil Rickman. This is the first book in the Merrily Watkins mysteries. As you can imagine, we are introduced to Merrily Watkins in this, who is a reverend and has a 15-year-old daughter named Jane. They move to this small town named Ludwardine, which is known for their apple cider, and Merrily Watkins steps right into a local dispute about a playwright wanting to use a story about a 17th century cleric that was accused of witchcraft, and he wants to put the play on inside the church. Merrily Watkins ends up having to be the one who makes the final decision, and she knows that no one's going to be happy no matter what the decision is. And there's supposed to be a mystery and supernatural twist to this story, which I feel never actually ended up being all that big. This story took 200 pages for anything to actually really happen, and even then it took another 300 pages for something to seriously add on to that. This whole book was so freaking slow that even when things really started rolling, it just wasn't enough to make up for how long it took to get there. I just couldn't care enough about the story because how slow, because the writing was so...
I don't know how, I don't want to say it's bad because it actually isn't that bad.
But the writing style was jagged and choppy, and because the dialect, the slang that he was using was hard for me to understand, there were times where I would be taken out of the story just from trying to figure out what that word actually meant in the context of what was being said. And the characters were horrible. I don't like Merrily Watkins, I don't like her daughter, and the people of the town I couldn't care less about. This whole story was just ridiculously long. Nothing happens. The characters were awful, and I can't really respect Merrily at all as much of a parent, and Jane as a brat who doesn't have much respect for herself or her mother, and I just couldn't believe the supernatural bit. It was just too much for me, and so this book only gets 1.5 stars, and that's just being generous. Thankfully, the next book that I read was better, and that was The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This is the first book in the Kingkiller Chronicles. This story is about Kvothe, who has become a legend, and he is telling how he became that. I know that is a very vague synopsis, but there's just a lot to this story, and I don't want to be spoilery, so that is all you're going to get. I want to make this review more structural because I have a lot to say. There's a lot in my head, so I'm going to go about it one thing at a time. So first off, I wanted to talk about the writing. The writing is the thing that introduces you to the story. It helps tell the story. It's what ties everything together, and without good writing, without a style that can bring the story to the reader and make it become alive, it can destroy the story for that reader. Style can go whichever way, but if everything else is bad with the writing, yeah, it can be. I am a stickler when it comes to grammar. I am a stickler when it comes to the writing in general. I find it's rare for me to find an author whose writing is so great that I will want to gather up all of their books and have them close to me. And Patrick Rothfuss is definitely going to be one of those authors where I'm going to grab up all of their books because his writing is so freaking beautiful. The way he was able to write even the simplest of sentences was wonderful. It was music, it was poetry, and maybe that's just a little bit too much, but there were poetry and music in this book, and the fact that he was able to write all those things in it and make it all so beautiful was wonderful to me. Now the story. The story itself was amazing. I love Kvothe's story. I love seeing him as an adult and seeing where he began, where he came from, and trying to figure out how he came from that to this. And the story was so well paced. There was never a time where I felt that the balance between the present and the past was out of joint. There was always something important about the present that you needed to see, because you have parts of the story of the present that is being played out too. And I really loved coming out of the past to the present and seeing, like, how did this part of the story affect Kvothe? How did it affect Chronicler and Bast? And these wonderful and magnificent stories told in this fashion, so you at least know that Kvothe has survived. And I know some people may have decided not to read this book because of that, but if you're one of those people, please just go and pick up this book, because it's definitely worth it. I don't feel like this book would be as good if it was told any other way. Kvothe's story is so fantastical and so grand. He became a legend, and I think it's only right that the story would be written in this way, that Kvothe would be telling his story, and it's just one of those stories where it has to be told this way or else it just won't be as good. World building now, I do feel that there was a little problem with the world building. I feel like it could have been handled a little better, but at the same time, I actually found myself enjoying finding the answers as we went along. There was never a moment where I felt like it was an info dump or where I was never getting enough of it to feel like I could understand things, but there are things that I am left wondering about, and I know that those answers will come. So I am not disappointed with the world building at all, but I do feel at the same time that certain things could have been handled a little better. And now on to character development. I think that Kvothe specifically is so layered. There's just so many parts of him, and it's really mysterious and hard to kind of understand him in a way, because there's just so much of him. And specifically because you see him as this older man and you're wondering how did he get from that to this, and you are seeing the beginnings of him becoming this person. It's just curious because he doesn't have that something that the younger person has anymore. And so because he is so mysterious and there's just so much to him, it's always making you want to learn more about him. And Kvothe is a character, he's a smart ass, but he's a good person, and because there's both of those things inside of him, that it just makes you love him even more. And then you have characters like Denna, who you can kind of understand, but at the same time you don't understand, and you have the relationship between her and Kvothe, and you're just struggling with trying to understand Kvothe's desire for her, but at the same time he's never had any romantic relationship with a woman before, and I can understand the draw to her, but it's frustrating because you don't want him to want to be near her, and it's all very unique and strange, and so you just want to know what's going to happen next with them. And then you have his two best friends at the university, Will and Sim, and I don't feel like they were the most fleshed out characters, but I'm hoping for more out of them. And I like them so much because they always have this banter between each other. You have Will, who's very serious, and I just want to dig into him more because I feel like if Kvothe would just listen to him more and actually talk to him more, he would understand certain things that he needs to learn. And then you have Bast, who is Kvothe's student in present day, and Bast is so unique. There's this huge mystery about him, and it wasn't until the very end that I realized what he was, and I was like, whoa. And then everything kind of fell into place when I found out. And the fact that I was kept going with Bast, and there's still the question about Bast and Kvothe, and how Bast and Chronicler are going to handle one another. It's just, there's all these elements to the story and to these characters it's all going to develop, and I'm so excited to see where they all go from this into the next book. This book took me a week to finish, but it didn't seem that long at all. I love how fast it went for me because I was just wanting to know what's next, and I kept turning the pages, and it was just so wonderfully written. There was never a moment where it was too slow, there was never a moment where I felt it was too fast, and the story is just wonderful, and I can't wait to find out what's going to happen next. So this book, of course, gets 5 stars. I am currently reading Harvesting the Heart by Jodi Picoult. This is her second book that she had ever written, and this one is about a young woman named Paige who is a wife and now is a mother. She only has a few vivid memories of her own mother who abandoned her at the age of 5, and because of that, she is worried about how she herself will be as a mother. Started this book, I did not realize that this was only her second novel that she has written, so I could understand why it felt so amateur hour here, because her writing didn't have the finesse as I was expecting it to have. It was a little bit overdone with the way she would describe things. It just didn't have that thing that I love about her writing, and it was kind of hard for me to get into the story because not only that, Paige and Nicholas are 2 frustrating characters that I don't particularly like. And I'm hoping to finish this by Monday, crossing my fingers, because I am eyeing out The Wise Man's Fear book in the Kingkiller Chronicles, and I just want to get into that. So I am determined to finish this book because I do love Jodi Picoult, and this is one of her first books that she has written, and I just feel like I need to give it the time it deserves. So those were the books I read. Tell me down below if you've read any of them. What did you think of them? I would love to know what you guys have been reading. Thank you guys so much for watching, and keep warm.